to actually, let me just start again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Robbie, I'm just so thrilled to actually get to see you, even if it's only on Zoom, because usually we get to talk on Clubhouse. And so we don't.
This is fun, right? We get to know each other a little bit. It's nice.
Yes. And I just wanted to introduce, for anybody who hasn't seen this before, my name is Joanne Butcher. I'm a business coach, and I work with filmmakers around raising money. And the reason I do this interview series is that so many filmmakers have a dream of making multiple films and having a life as a filmmaker, and it often seems unattainable. So the reason that I interview filmmakers is to find out, well, you know, how did you do it? And the other thing that I feel is really important, I have just finished writing a book. It's not published yet, but
oh, congrats.
Thank you. I spend a lot of time talking about why I think it is that filmmakers are often very misinformed about the way that the business works. And a lot of the reason for the misinformation is that producers are not the ones who get interviewed. So I'm very proud that I get to interview producers. Actually, on a podcast, you know, they want to interview the actors, they want to interview possibly the directors, but who cares about the producers, right? So nobody ever gets to hear from the producers, but the producers are the ones who raise the money and actually get the films made. So I'm very grateful that you're spending some time with us today. And I don't ever do an introduction because I start with my first question is, when did you first know that you were a filmmaker?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. And with regard to, yes, obviously I produce, but I'm also a director. So those who are in the room that want a little bit of that, you've got both. So, you know, I can certainly speak on with both hats, whichever one needs to, whichever one's question needs to be asked. But as far as myself, I was a business major in college, and I acted and played baseball. They were my passions, but never. I didn't think I was going to be a professional, even though I played in high school and a little bit of college. But plays I did since I was 3 years old, and they were my true joys. And then my senior year in college, I was doing Godspell, and we were doing a pre-show for a senior citizens facility. They brought their people to us, and a woman came up to me after the show and said, I just want you to know my husband passed away 6 months ago, and you made me laugh for the first time since he passed. And I was just, that's the reaction I had. I was just blown away that you could touch somebody in such a profound way. And I came home that weekend. I'm like, Mom, Dad, I think I'm going to go pursue acting in New York. And I was, you know, 2 months away from my degree. And pots and pans started flying because nobody was real happy about that decision. But, you know, I had to follow my passion. And I went to New York and I acted for a while. And I got some parts in films and TV and did a little theater. And then I wrote a script. Writing was something that came natural. And I wrote a script based on my experiences. One of my first jobs in the industry was I was Michael J. Fox's stand-in in all his movies. So I wrote a film about a famous actor named Mitchell K. Wolfe, which, you know, was a tongue-in-cheek thing about Michael. And it wasn't really about Michael, the person, because that wouldn't have been as funny. And it was an way exaggerated, you know, person that I was standing in for. And we made, after, you know, that's a whole long story how that got made in itself. But once we made it, I was not as thrilled with how it came out. I acted, produced, and wrote it. I didn't direct it. And I was like, if I'm going to kill myself and put 23 back then, way back then, dating myself, but you could put, you can get 23 credit cards and actually put a ridiculous amount of money on those cards before the financial crash in 2008. And I did, and along with raising money as well. And I was like, if I'm going to go through all this killer stuff to get a movie made, I want my vision to be my vision. So so I took directing classes and then started to direct. But when you're in the indie world, sometimes, you know, you need to be a producer as well as a director. You know, it'd be lovely to just get hired to do all these wonderful directing projects, but people want to make, you know, films, you have to produce. And so
can I just go back to this first film that you were not thrilled with the outcome? I just want to understand. So did you direct that?
I didn't, and
Not, you hired a director. Did you hire a director?
Yes, yes. We had a director who was very seasoned, and he had to back out because of a bigger, I don't want to say better, but bigger opportunity. And but we were all set to go. So, and the credit card debt was, you know, it wasn't like, let's put it off. We had already sort of, you know, the horse was out of the barn. So we scrambled for another director, and I just didn't feel that he was prepared enough. And it showed in the work. And so that's why that happened.
Looking back on it now, do you think if you had directed it yourself, you could have done a better job?
I'm going to be fair and say the only reason I would lean in a yes direction is because A, I cared so much about it, and B, I knew the story so well. But I don't know if technically I was ready to do that and star in a movie. Directing a film or producing a film is already, if you're the on-set producer, like I still produce some of the stuff I do, but I do pre-production and post-production, most of my producing thing. Once I'm filming, that hat goes off, and we have other producers that are on-set producers. But to be an on-set producer and star in a film, I think, you know, yeah, Spike Lee can do it, but Spike Lee is Spike Lee. And I wasn't at that point, you know, and I'm not now, but I'm certainly wasn't then.
So, and that first feature film, were you able to get distribution for it?
We did. We got distribution pretty quickly. We had a few names in it. Kelly Ripa had just gone from soap opera Kelly Ripa to TV, to, you know, morning co-host Kelly Ripa. David Ogden Stiers from MASH was in the film. Lou Myers from A Different World, and Judith Ivey, who's brilliant. So we had some names for the budget that it was, and we did get distribution, but you know, I could do a whole seminar about distribution, and that's a whole other, you know, that's a whole other
let's do that one day, Robbie.
Yes. Yes. You know, there's just those are I know horror movies are big. They should make a horror movie about trying to find distribution and what happens even after you get distribution for a film.
They should make a horror movie about filmmaking.
I promise you, people would get scared if they saw the underbelly, if you haven't had distribution for a film before.
Well, Robbie, one of the things that I was very interested in seeing your films was that you have really been very successful at getting names in your film. And I feel as though that is a place where a lot of people get really stuck. And I see my clients as well struggling with that. Yes. And so I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you were able, even on your first feature, to get names in the film, and how you've continued working with that. I think a lot of people would be very interested in hearing about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So so there's the quote unquote professional version of how you get talent attached, that talent agents that like WME and CAA would like me to say. And that there is that.
What would they like you to say, Robbie? What would they like you to say, Robbie? What would be the I don't know, the classic, I don't know, way of doing it that CAA would be happy for you to say?
So when it comes to the three-lettered agencies, that's WME, UTA, and CAA, for those who don't know, they would like you to have the money, first of all. They would like you to be able to make a firm offer, and the money's in the bank. And in CAA's case, more than any of those, even distribution already in place. And it's just a reality that 95 to, I'm being generous, % of people in the independent space are not going to have those three, probably aren't going to have those two of those three. I'm sure if anybody has tried to make a film at all, other than a really low micro budget film, which you can go out and have actor friends, do. But once you're trying to attach talent, it's the old catch-22. Money wants, your financiers want to see that you have actors. More so the actors' agents than the actors want to know that it's financed already. So that's what everybody's beating their heads up, and I still have to deal with that.
Yes.
Occasionally you can make an offer or go to a manager. That's usually the smartest thing to do if you don't have the money yet. The agents aren't even going to look at it. They don't even have the time. I get it. The managers sometimes, if there's some kind of interest, will at least entertain looking at what you're sending. Or assistants are always good, because it's their job to discover new things. So if you can make relationships with assistants of managers and assistants of agents, you may get some play and say, hey, would you, it's really cool. This is who I'm interested in. I'm making it for this important reason why I feel, would you take a look? And you may get some play there. That's how they would like for you to do it. And we met each other in Clubhouse. I have a very difficult time when agents give you the spiel that this is the professional way to do things, when they're in practice many times in passing on films, saying that your film, the actor didn't respond to your material, when in fact the actor isn't even aware 80 to 90% of the time that they even got that script.
Yes.
And to your point of my early film, my first film, David Ogden Stiers, who was Major Winchester and MASH and did a bunch, it was brilliant, very nice man. I was standing in for Michael J. Fox in one of the many movies I did for him. No, actually it wasn't. So this is what happens. I'm a smaller guy. I was Michael stand-in in all his movies. And after a while, you get a reputation of being, I guess somebody that they can depend on to be next to a big star and do his job or her job right. And so then I became the 5'5" stand-in to any like a major 5'5" star or close 5'4" to 5'7". I was the go-to. So on this particular movie, anyone from Emile Hirsch to Elijah Wood to Woody Allen, one movie. So
I love that. I love that story, Robbie, because I'm always saying to filmmakers, I always say filmmakers are very, very complex. The industry is not. And I love it that you're a stand-in 5'4" to 5'7". That's it.
Yeah. And sometimes there were some sets where the DP, the director of photography, wanted you to be exactly the size. And then there were others like, it's close enough. We can do. I'd rather have the dependable guy than somebody who's maybe 1.5 inches off size wise. So I was standing for all those guys. So this movie was Jungle to Jungle, and David Ogden Stiers was a main actor in it. He was the bad guy. And when you're doing a bunch of those movies as a stand-in in New York, you're getting to know there's like 4 sets of crews basically that all jump from movie to movie. It's almost like the circus. All right, we're going from this town to this town, and this is and there's like 4, so everybody knows you after you've been doing them for a while. So I'm trying to get this movie, The Stand-In, off, and David Ogden Stiers hears me talking to the crew about it. He's like, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, I'm trying to put together this movie." And he's like, "Oh, can I read it?" Which was shocking. And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So, Boy Scout motto, always be prepared. Of course, back then everything wasn't digital. So I had my script in my bag and I'm like, "Here you go." And he literally is doing close-ups of him and reading my script through the course of the day Like action, he would do a scene cut. He'd sit on an apple box and he's reading my script, which it was stunning to me.
Fantastic.
And he by the end of the day, he was quoting lines from the film and the script, and I was shocked. So after the last day of the shoot, I said, David, can I ask you a question? He's like, Robbie, don't. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I confidence. I'm like, all right, this guy read my script. I'm going to ask him to be in it. And he said, don't. And I'm like, okay, I won't. He goes, what, you want an autograph? And I, no, I don't want an autograph. And he's like, oh, then you can ask me any question that you want. So I said, well, you read the script and you read the Professor Smith role. And, if, I'd be honored if you consider playing it. And he's like, what you're trying to do is by making a movie is like pushing Jello up a mountain. He's like, if you get the money, here's my agent's number. Here's my personal fax. Everybody had faxes back then. You get in touch with me. I'll come do your movie. I'm like, great. Thank you. Big hug. See you later. And so 6 months later, we finally get the money. We have everything. I call up his agent, tell him the short version of that story. And she's like, okay, great. I'll call you back in a little bit. Calls me back and she says, I am so sorry. David can't do your film. He's busy. He apologizes and wishes you all the luck in the world. So I'm like, So I'm very thorough, and I had his fax number, and I type him a little one-page note. Very nice, very respectful. Thank you so much it was amazing that you took the time out to even read it. Wish you the best. Fax it off. 2 minutes later, hello, this is David, Ogden Stiers. Hey, David, what are you talking about? I said, well, I called your agent. They passed. I understand. He was like, give me 5 minutes. Click. 5 minutes later, give my agent all the information. I'm doing your movie. So had I not had the fax number,
right,
I would have been like, all right, David isn't doing the movie. What can I do? That's happened 4 times with one of them is an A-list person where the agent got caught in a full-fledged lie. So I'm sorry to tell that long story to go back to my original.
No, this is fantastic. This is a fantastic story, because now that you've been through it 4 times, what is your theory?
So my theory is, my quick soapbox is, don't ask me to do everything by the book and be professional when you just lied to me. If you don't want him to do it because you don't know who the heck I am or whatever, but don't say he passed when or she passed when they didn't. So the learn out from that is sometimes you have to cut the corners. And actually, one of the other lies was me cutting the corners. So this very favorite person, he's an actor, singer, you all know his name, was doing a one-man show on Broadway. So I'm like, what I'm gonna do is, I had my script, wrote a nice letter. He was doing the show, one-man show on Broadway, had like a young person knock on the door. It was in like a US post office envelope, and say, I have a delivery for so-and-so. And the stage person doesn't know if it's actually something that was sent, by some big shot. So they took it, and 2 weeks go by, I don't hear anything. And I'm like, well, I guess I gotta go the traditional route. So I wrote to CAA, made the offer, and 3 days later, it was a Thursday, I get a pass. Sorry, he's not interested. Okay. 2 days later, Saturday evening, we're driving, get a call. Hi, is this Robbie Bryan? Yes. This is so-and-so from CAA. We accidentally passed on the wrong project. Is that still available? And I'm like, to myself, CAA's in practice of passing on I'm sorry, it wasn't Lord of the Rings we wanted. We got that confused. Are you kidding me? So obviously what had happened is he maybe took a look at 10 pages of it and was like, oh my God, this is pretty cool. And said, and so that was another example of it. So my point is that I'm willing to go, you have to sometimes at least get it in their hands first, find a way to do that. Without being obnoxious about it, obviously being respectful, but get it in their hands somehow through a friend. You know, it just depends on the, I'm not a very pushy person, but I try to be, you know, I'm not going to be.
You said before though that you were thorough, which I think is far more effective. I just wanted to say two things that these stories make me think of. One is that in my experience, actors like to work.
Yes.
Actors like to act, you know, they'd rather be acting. And then the other thing is my one experience with this, I have a friend who's a WGA screenwriter, and I was helping out a producer who's making a, you know, multi-million-dollar epic historic drama. And so he wanted to hire my friend. And I called the agent. Not only did the agent say no, she was extremely rude. The producer called the agent. She was extremely rude. And all at the same time, I'm on the phone with my friend when he's saying, I want to do it.
Yes.
You know, and as a result of that experience, he decided to fire his agent. But so it wasn't like, it wasn't as though the agent was kind of being protective of him and, you know, making sure people weren't wasting his time or whatever. She was just an asshole for reasons I don't know. It doesn't make any sense.
First of all, they don't want you going around them. And like I said, if you were honest and played and were professional and didn't lie to me, I wouldn't have a need to go around your system.
Right.
I would love to play the game that you want to play, but I have to have a chance to win it as well. So and make an offer as well. And Gina Gershon, William Dafoe, and these are public stories, which is why I'm sharing that, and I didn't share the name of the other person, but somebody just did it, all fired their agents for that reason. They found out after the fact, you know, they some big movie came out, some big indie, and they saw each other at an Independent Spirit Award or the Oscars or something. And, you know, they started talking to the director or the writer and said, man, why didn't you send that script to me? And like, we did, your agent passed.
Oh my God. This is so interesting because I can understand why an agent would pass if somebody is offering a very, very small amount of money, but it doesn't, I know in the circumstance that I experienced, it didn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense at all.
No, there's one of my producing partners did a movie. It was like a $700,000 budget movie, but David Spade was in it. Bruce Dern was in it. Oh my gosh. Why am I freaking on this? Tammy Blanchard, but the guy with the great voice who James Earl Jones was in it, which is a really great cast. And Guillermo Diaz, and they made an offer to John Malkovich at one point, and they ran into John Malkovich way after the movie ended, and my friend Spiro was talking to another actor on a commercial that actor and John was on, and John says, hey, that sounds like a great project. He goes, yeah, we offered you, 2 days on it, but your agent passed. He's like, how much, if you don't mind me asking, what was the offer? And it was a legitimate, it was like $75,000 or $100,000 a day. That's like not chicken feed. Yeah. It's like, I would have done that in 2 seconds. And he gave him his phone number. He said, next time, get in touch with me. So unless I know where they do it, and I know that, there are a million scripts out there and they can't read every script, and I get that.
Sure.
But, or if the actor's like, I want you to be the filter and you send me what you think I should be looking at, that's a different thing.
Sure.
But to your point, actors like to work, and they get really pissed when they see that I could have done this lovely film, and maybe they only needed me for 4 days or 5 days or 2 days. And instead I sat home and mowed the lawn, and I could have been working. And, you know, if more actors knew how many times really nice scripts were sent and they didn't even get the chance to say no to them, there'd be a lot of fired agents.
Wow, that's so interesting. So after you had your first feature and you were not thrilled, so you then went and studied directing. And so did you direct the next film that you worked on?
Yeah, so I did a short first to, you know, to apply, you know, to apply some of the things that I thought I had learned and make sure that I felt comfortable, you know, because I was an actor, but, you know, and so the positive of that is there's actors speak that actors appreciate that some technically strong directors don't have and can't speak that language and don't understand process, and that, you know, it's different processes for, if all 4 of you, 5 of you were you know, actors, Emily may be, you know, working with miser technique, and Joanne might want a ton of input and feedback from me, and Diane might say, I just let me be in character, and you know, and nobody's right or wrong, but you have to be part psychologist to realize this is what Emily needs, this is what Joanne needs, this is what Diane needs. And you know, so once I felt good about choosing, it got into some really nice festivals. The next film that I directed, which was I Murders, it had for what we made that for, which is way less than what I just said my friend's budget was for the other movie, we had Frank Grillo. How
did you get Frank Grillo? So
Frank Grillo was innovative Frank Grillo. He wasn't quite CAA Frank Grillo.
Oh, okay.
He had just done Glory with Ed Norton, so he certainly wasn't.
Yeah.
But he wasn't that. Gabrielle Anwar. See, we had a fortunate thing, not fortunate for, you know, everybody, but the writer's strike was going on, and nobody, because I'm not, you know, I wasn't in the union. It was a SAG film, but SAG wasn't on strike. It was a writer's strike.
Yes.
On because they were still doing commercials and stuff like that, so they didn't, you know, SAG didn't shut down. And you know, Gabby, you know, she was Burn Notice was on hiatus, and you know, sometimes well, whatever, you know, the actors lead certain lifestyles, and when all of a sudden your total income is swooped out, you know, it made it possible to get her. Billy D. Williams was a package deal with Gabby. Who else was in it?
That's interesting. How does that work? How does that work? A package deal of 2 actors?
They sort of are like, they're negotiate, you know, Billy was getting older at the time and wasn't working as much. And it was sort of like, it was almost like a throw-in, for which I loved, but because the producer wanted to play a part, and I was like freaking out. So at that point, I would have paid Billy like crazy money, because I didn't want this guy to ruin the movie with you know, by playing the role he wanted to play. But for us to get to where we needed to get for Gabby's salary, that the manager also represented Billy D and said, I'll give you Billy D for a couple of days for this price if you meet Gabby's price, because I guess Gabby needed money at the time. And so we got both of them, and Charles Durning and Margaret Colin, and it was just I mean, we're talking about a $300,000 budget movie, and I had all those people in it.
Wow, this is so inspiring, Robbie. Really, really is. Really is.
it's relationships, you know, that I didn't have to chase anybody down the street. I remember doing that one day with Ben Vereen, trying to get him a script when he was doing some crime show, and it was in the winter in New York, and they were shooting up in Harlem, and I'm literally chasing in the snow. I was like nutty stuff that I did when I was younger, that maybe I wouldn't go that crazy anymore, but it goes to sort of show that you have to figure out ways to get in. Maybe you go to a film festival and you get to meet somebody, you know, that's another way to do it. You know, you just want to make a personal connection, because unless you have the money, and there's very few of us that are sitting here saying, man, I have this $2 million and I just don't know what to do next to make my movie happen, you know, yeah.
So by this time you were directing all of the films, is that right? Or do you
all of our
sometimes produce and sometimes direct?
Yeah, my company is Good to Be Seen Film. So anything that we do, I either write and direct, or I will option scripts. I've made films that we optioned and that I directed. There are people that ask me to help them produce, and not necessarily. I tell people, like, I'm not a bank, so it's hard enough to find money for my own films.
Right.
But if you have films, or you're going to do a crowdfund, or if it's a smaller film or whatever, you know, I'll help with that, of course. But I'm good at, like you said, Joanne, I'm good at sometimes at helping attach or whatever. It's just, we only have so many favors that we can,
Yes.
you know, use up. And so, you know, there's a cost associated to that in a way, because if I use up that favor for you,
yes, exactly,
I can't go back and ask them to work for that again for me.
right.
So,
yes, I think that's an incredibly important thing with the film industry. I find even it's difficult for some of my clients to quite understand, you know, that I have relationships that are, you know, 20, 30, 40 years in the making. And I have to use them very judiciously, you know. And then also I see from in your filmography that sometimes you're an executive producer, sometimes you're a producer, sometimes you're how do you end up I'm trying to figure out how to phrase the question, but like, how do you end up in any particular role on a project? Does it depend if it's from your company, or is it if it's outside the company, or anything like that?
In general, my EP credits come from outside the company. There were I Murders. We had a very it was all about that person, and that he didn't want to share any credit.
Right.
It was unfortunately that movie was one of the worst experience I ever had making a film, and it's a really important lesson that I give to all of you, that surround yourself by people. And somebody put it so brilliant. So I'm putting together a movie now. It's my dream movie I've been trying to make for 12 years, and it almost got made once, and then I got stage 4 cancer and had to battle that. And the movie was about to happen, and then everything obviously came to a screaming halt, and I went through chemo and radiation and all that stuff, and it kind of went away. And then
how long ago was that, Robbie?
That was in 2015. And then from the radiation, because it was up here, it did damage to my arteries. So then I had to have a heart operation as well. So over a 2.5-year period, almost lost my life twice. But that sort of derailed what I was doing. And then I had to sort of slowly build myself back up in terms of the movies that I was making, and just life in general. But I'm now this movie Black Hat, which has 2 million followers on Facebook. It's it's a narrative film with some with 15 minutes of anime interspersed, and it's an anti-bullying movie. back to, I don't know how I segued there. I'm sorry. I lost my train of
That's right,
thought.
that's right. No,
But
you were
back to
saying
your-
that there's a film you've been trying to make for 12 years, and then you got completely derailed by
Ab-
your health.
Absolutely. And more to your question, which was, the executive producing side of it. So that film, I was like, all right, I'll take an executive producer credit instead of, and we raised all the money. He didn't raise any of the money. And anyway, usually executive producer credits are money based.
Right.
So, sometimes, and this is the case, and maybe that's where I was making the correlation back to Black Hat, which is this movie I'm hoping to make this year. There's a really prominent, I don't know if he officially wants me to talk about it yet. So there's a really prominent person that isn't was a Sundance producer, 4 movies, Independent Spirit Award. He's coming on as an EP because of what he may peripherally bring, both in credibility to the film, and whatever calls he can make. Usually it's a money credit. He's not going to get money for that, but not to bring up this individual, but Harvey Weinstein many times, even though he was an EP because it's Harvey Weinstein, so they're going to get it, or sometimes actors will do that. Like if you're making a smaller budget movie, and you don't have a lot of money to pay him or her, then you attach an EP credit for them as well. So those are usually the two things. There's a movie I did that was a smaller film, and I really liked the person, so we gave a little bit of money in that case. I mean, a relatively small amount of money, a lot of money for their film, and got an EP credit for that, as well as kind of advised her on distribution and everything else that may be needed. I went out, it was right after COVID started. They still shot the film, so I really wasn't comfortable being on set because of the other illnesses that I had at the time. We didn't really know a lot about COVID at that point, so I didn't want to risk being on set and that they would necessarily 100. I saw them doing like early, I was supposed to go the second week. I saw them doing like some videos from scenes from the set, and I wasn't seeing a lot of masks, and I was just like, I think maybe I'll stay home.
Maybe not.
For that one, but
Yeah,
great group of people, and I adore them. But yeah, that was.
I just made the same decision about Sundance. I got COVID for the second time this year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
December. And every time I heard the word Sundance, I just could feel myself go, ooh. The idea of being around thousands of people in the snow, I was like, no.
It's yeah, it's listen, we all have to make decisions that protect ourselves, protect our families, and protect the people around us. So and it was like we went to Oldenburg last year in Germany for a film festival. I did a short film about a school shooting, and it was it was scary, and we were good. And then the last day was this crazy party that we attended, and the day after I'm like, what was I thinking, like doing that? Thank God I didn't get it that time, but yeah, you have to do what's right for you.
Yeah. So tell us more about Black Hat that you're going to be making this year.
We still have to raise some money, so we're not there yet, but
it's gonna happen, Robbie.
I 100% believe it's gonna. To be honest with you, I actually 100% believe it's going to happen. I didn't up until it had been 11 years, and I didn't know what else to do at that point from a script perspective. Because I've sent it out for coverage a trillion times, and back and forth. Almost made it 7 years ago, before I got sick, and then it's been just tough to the film business has become like two kinds of films, micro budget and tentpole,
right?
And so in general, $1 to $10 million budget movies, which are really the movies I love, I tend to love the most, are being made less and less. They're still being made, but they're being made less and less. And that's kind of where this movie fits in, on the lower half of that scale, but it fits in the couple $1 million budget, range. So I didn't know. And then I got so re-energized when I met Darren, the person, the person's going to be an EP. He does this thing called Feng Shui. Highly recommend. Screenwriter Feng Shui. And so y'all know what coverage is, which is you send it out, you get your couple pages or maybe 10 pages or whatever you paid for. And you take from that what you feel makes your script better, and you implement it. He does this thing, which is you have not 8 to 10 Zooms, 2 hours each, and you literally go line for line through the whole script. And he gives notes, he gives suggestions, he gives ideas. Again, you can take as little as or as much as you want. He does not get a writing credit regardless. It's still your script. You pay what the fee is, and the script he elevated. And then after the 10 sessions, you do all your rewrites, and then you have one more mini Feng Shui where he looks at the changes you made and gives one little last set of notes. Through that process, he once in a while, if he likes it enough, he will, if you want him to, come on as an EP. You don't have to pay him anything until the movie happens, and then he's a line item on your budget. If it never gets made, it never gets made, and then you're done. And for me and for Black Katt, it just, I didn't think, and I'm not saying it's the best script that ever happened, so it couldn't get better. From where I could bring it, there was no way else for me, nowhere else for me to go. And he stretched it that whatever percent it stretched, that I feel it now will get 100% made. So now we're putting pitch decks together, and now we have other people who have joined in on it. And so I 100%, but it's about a teen manga artist who is bullied, and her dream is to get to this really wonderful convention across country where this Japanese director is going to turn one amateur manga into an anime. And so when no one believes in her dream, she kidnaps her estranged grandfather, and they go on a crazy trip across the country to get to the convention in time. And there's 15 minutes of anime interspersed. Whenever she draws her manga, it comes alive in an anime and sort of mirrors what she learns about her family that she didn't know. And that starts to slowly get incorporated into the manga. So it's, when I got sick and the movie, I was supposed to be on Ellen. I was supposed to be on Katie Couric because of the anti-bullying stuff and all that.
Right.
And this wonderful story, we were doing a crowdfund, and one of the rewards was you get to name a character after somebody. And a friend from high school said, this disabled cosplayer just passed away. She was a teenager. She had this blood disease that took her life. And would you name it after Cassie? And we had 2 days left in the campaign. And I was reaching really high because we had, I think, 200,000 followers at that point. And I was like, oh, we'll get all these followers. We'll get all these people to donate. So we reached really high and we fell very short. But I said, listen, the campaign ends in 2 days. So I'm just going to be returning your money anyway, because we're not going to hit the goal. But tonight I'm going to rewrite the best friend and call her Cassie and use some of her mannerisms in the character. And she told the father, and he called me up hysterical crying, and he said, I can't believe you're doing this for my little girl. And what can I do to help make this movie? And I said, listen, your daughter just died last week. Forget about my silly movie, And he said, no, you don't understand. Like, this gives me purpose. And I've just been walking in my house. And he just kept going on and on. He lived in New Orleans. And I said, and he said that Comic-Con, he's like, I'll go down there and I'll hold a bucket and I'll get money for you, whatever I can do. And I was like, all right, if you're so determined, I will fly down and sit with you at Comic-Con. I knew we weren't going to raise any money. I didn't care. And I said, I'll sit with you. Unbeknown to me, he called WDSU, which is an NBC affiliate in Baton Rouge. They came and did a story and it went totally viral.
Wow.
Had news outlets calling me. I had all these people. So that's how the whole Ellen thing occurred. And so there was so much, it was happening, it was going on. And then it wasn't meant to happen then. It was meant to happen now because the script is way better than it ever was. And so it's happened now.
Right. I'm so excited to hear that you did a crowdfunding campaign, even if it didn't work. But I'm just excited because I think that many filmmakers think, when they get to a certain point in their careers, oh, I don't need to do that anymore. But I just think there are so many positive things about crowdfunding. It's a great way to get the word out.
So I've done 3, two for other movies, and they were wildly successful. Again, I didn't know what I was doing when I did the first one. Right. So much like you have classes, there's a guy called the Kickstarter guy. And there is a sign. I have 2 friends doing them now, and they just jumped in. One of them I was able to coach a little bit. The other one, she like literally did it 2 days after we talked about it. And there's such a process and there's such a formula for success with crowdfunding. So, I had my pros and my cons about crowdfunding in the past, and my only negative was that if you do one, then you get the money you need, then you need to make your movie.
Yes.
I've had people that have ran them, and then 2 years later, they're doing all sorts of other things. I'm like, listen, people believed in your dream. They backed you, whether it was $25 or $200 or whatever. And because I've raised plenty of money that was private equity. And of course, the clock's always ticking when somebody is actually investing. They're like, yes. What's happening? When's it going?
Where's my money?
Yes. In crowdfunding, nobody's expecting money back, but they are expecting this dream that they help support you become a thing, and you have responsibility. And I've seen people not do that. But otherwise, I think crowdfunding is, especially if you're starting out, but certainly even me, we did this school shooting thing last year, and we put in actually half the money, a little less than half, but the rest of it was raised through crowdfunding and is very successful. So
what's the highest amount you've raised crowdfunding?
So the one that failed was 49. We raised 49,000, but we were shooting for 150,000. So, right. But that again was based on thinking 200,000 followers. If everybody put in, if everyone puts in $1, we'll be golden. That wasn't realistic. The one that was successful, 31,000 and 25,000.
Great. Yes. And it's true that there is a science to it, and then hard work, I think, is the case.
So can I say that, because that's what I'm seeing, unfortunately, with my one friend who's doing one now, and not that she doesn't work hard. She's a mom. She runs companies. She started to shoot her movie, and I'm just like, you don't understand that it's pretty much a full-time job for those 30 days for you to be working on your crowdfund. You can't just post it once, and as we all know, algorithms, like 2% of people see a post it's intense to raise that money. It's intense, and you have to be, somebody donates and you have to post and thank that person, and that's part of your marketing, because that's a way to say, can you, instead of saying who can give us some more money today? You can be like, hey, Joanne just gave us, not the amount, but Joanne just got us to 25% today. We're hoping to get to 30%. If any, who can help get us to 30%? Every time somebody does it, you're not only being thankful and grateful, but it gives you an excuse to post, and you have to just be on that and emailing people privately, not just posting on. And it sucked. Like, it's hard for me to ask for money, but I want to make the movie, and I know I know who can give me $25 or $50 or $100, and it's not going to harm them. And I would do the same thing if they were doing it. So
I should say I have a very, very different methodology that we use, and my clients, I start them out at $11,000 or $12,000, and I've had people raise up to 67 is the highest so far that we've had. But we don't do it in the way that you're describing, which is the standard way of doing it. We have a very different way of doing it. But I wanted to, I want to see if Diane or Allison has a question that they want to ask.
Hi, my name's Diane. And I'm working on my first documentary feature. It's Are You Hearing Me? And it's a film that I'm celebrating the stories of 5 female professional artists who've experienced trauma, sexual or physical trauma of some kind, and exploring how it is that we empower ourselves in our communities. And it's very much what inspired this is what's going on in the country in terms of women's civil rights and other things that are being, people that are ending up on the Supreme Court that have no business being there. And so I want to apologize. I missed the very beginning, but what's interesting to me is that I looked at what your films were first, what your filmography looked like. And I would have anticipated that you were a writer initially, not necessarily a marketer. And again, I apologize if this is something you've already shared, but it also seems like when I'm looking at what the stories are on all of these, they're great ideas. I mean, they're absolutely fantastic. And I know, yes, I come from a traditional background of film school, et cetera, where what you're encouraged to do is have scripts in your pocket, basically. And so how did you become the writer that you've obviously become, in addition to everything else that you do? Because that seems to be really key in a lot of the projects that you're doing. No, plus, it's amazing the cast that you have. Unbelievable. As Joanne's already pointed out, everything, it's just like, wow.
Thank you. It's one of those things. First of all, Joanne's seen me in Clubhouse. We've probably known of each other for 2 years now. And a lot of times I'm in the audience, and I'm not a moderator in any way. And I always feel there's reason, there's ways to learn, even if I may have done this or done that or done, and there are people in Clubhouse who've done way more than me. And there are a lot of people who've done maybe less than me in the industry. But, all these things, you can always pick up nuggets for better. To answer your question is kind of I always love to write, but just like I love to act, even though I don't act anymore, I love to act. But I never thought I was going to do it for a living until you probably missed the story, but my senior year in college, that I was doing a play, and somebody came up and said I really touched them. And I was like, wow, what an amazing thing to do for the rest of your life if you can do that in some way, make somebody laugh, cry, think, whatever it is, when they need it. And so I realized that I had a story to tell, stories to tell, and I wasn't going to I didn't think I was a good enough actor to be able to sustain in that way. So, but I did feel that I could write. So then I just had to go to school and learn how to write for film and television. And so that's what I did. the movies for the most part, except for Black Hat, this new movie, the movies that features I've mostly made were, this is what we hear all the time, right? What sells right now? It's horror, it's faith-based, it's drama. Documentaries is a separate, separate category, but comedy is tough to sell without names. That doesn't mean it can't happen. See, and that's the thing. Joanne just said to me, we do it in a different way. My way is not there's no way to make a film one way. There's no way to raise money. If you just do this thing, you'll get all the money in the world. There are principles that apply that you probably need no matter what. However Joanne is raising money through her crowdfunding and how I am, that probably intersect, because there are certain principles of how things get raised, but how we come about it, I would never say, oh, my way's right or Joanne's way's right. As long as we're both seeing success at what we're doing, we're both right. So, and that's okay too. But yeah, I felt that was where my strength lied, in being able to tell stories. So that's why I became a writer and took classes too.
Yeah, and now, Joanne, you were talking specifically about crowdfunding, right? In terms of what you do that's somewhat different than.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And yeah. You know what? The raising money is the same thing. The raising private equity is the same thing, in that I'm sure I will tell you how it's worked for me, and Joanne can tell you how it's worked for her and her clients, and they may not be the same ways, but there were some intersecting principles of how they were successful.
Well, I love that both of you really talk about, I just wanted to say, I really love that you both talk about that this is an industry that's based on relationships, and relationships that are not necessarily always based on nepotism, but, on the types of things that you were describing. And I know, Joanne, obviously, that's one of your superpowers. And so, how very important that is. So thank you. It's really been inspiring listening to you, and thanks for taking the time to answer my question.
Thank you for coming. Thank you so much.
I know we're out of time, but I just realized there's one last question I wanted to talk to you about. So with all the features that you have and all the different versions of distribution, what has been the best distribution experience that you've had with any of your films?
Ooh. And you want that to fit. First of all, again, you guys close up when you want. I'm not going anywhere right now. So I'll talk as long as you want. But talking about distribution, that I have to be figure out how to be concise about. Oh
yeah, we're gonna do our distribution class together, Robbie. That's what we're gonna do.
Okay, that sounds great. It's really weird, because that movie I Murders, that had the huge cast in it, that was one time where timing worked against me, because I told you we had a rough time with one of the producers, and we ended up in a lawsuit, and it was right around 2008-9 when the financial market crashed, and Blockbusters and Hollywood Videos went out of business, which is one of the worst things that ever happened to independent filmmakers.
Right.
But I smacked Netflix. I'm sorry if anyone works for them, but I snapped Netflix, because it really changed. That's where smaller to middle class filmmakers and films. It used to be, you make film, have a couple names in it, and you can sell, 50,000 or 100,000 DVDs to Blockbuster all over the country, and that was how you made it. And plus, I miss on a Friday walking in and looking at boxes and look at this. I didn't know this movie with these two actors is in it. I'll check that out. Now, if you go through, you're going to sit there and go through 7,000 titles on your on Comcast or whatever. And little tip for filmmakers: when you're writing your scripts, title it with an A, B, C, or a number. very important. And the reason for that is, if you don't know, is, if your title starts with a T and people are scrolling through 7,000 things, they probably are going to stop before they get to the T. And so you want yours to be a number or an A or a B or a C, if at all possible.
I had an amazing experience. I've only shared this with the particular client so far, but anyway, I have a client whose title of her film was a V, began with a V.
Yeah.
And one day I had a dream about it where I was talking to my distributor and I was saying, oh, what if I have her call it AV? And then I said to him, no, she's not going to like that. She's not going to like that. The next morning I woke up and she said, we've got to change the title. And she picked a title beginning with A.
Yes. That's a, just keep that in your pocket, that, and your distributor, once you sell, once you make a deal, may do that anyway. But why not beat them to the trick and at least have the name that you wanted on your film instead of them coming up with something. So getting back to that story, we had a big MG on the table. We got into a lawsuit. It took 8 months. By the time the lawsuit was settled, that the world had changed.
Right.
The market crashed. The MG was reduced by a third, and we didn't get our money back with all that cast. It's
Wow.
crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Conversely, there's a film that I was a producer on that was made for $120,000 plus actor and crew deferments, and it grossed. We didn't see this, of course, but it grossed close to $3 million. So good story, bad story, and there's a bunch of them all in between.
Yes. That's great. And just to close out, because I actually have an appointment at 1:15, but is iMurders, are you seeing a new level of return on AVOD platforms for iMurders?
So unfortunately we signed a really bad deal.
Oh, okay.
Last thing, I know we're not doing distribution, be really careful in your deal. So we were cross collateralized, and which means, if they lost like in video, but made money in digital or whatever, those things are done in sync. And what happened is they sent a ridiculous amount of DVDs to Walmart, and Walmart basically within a week, if you haven't sold X amount % of your DVDs, they ship them back, and you pay for that. So we were so far in the hole that we could never see our way back. Even if were successful, it went to them.
Right.
And we also signed, somehow brainless, we signed a 20-year deal with them. So that film went from Anchor Bay, Lionsgate, Anchor Bay, Lionsgate. You think, oh, my film's with Lionsgate, how cool!
Wow.
But
Great.
it's an old movie that they have no skin in the game, because they didn't put anything into it, and now they own it, and whatever pennies are trickling into Lionsgate, we're not seeing any of. So it's starting to show up in things, because Frank Grillo's bigger and horror and everything, but we'll never see a penny from that. So
wow. Well, it's the story of so many films, but thank you so much, Robbie. This was absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad that we got to finally spend some time, and we'll, I'll reach out to you and we'll cook up some distribution, something or other.
I'm so honored and grateful for you asking me, Joanne and Emily, and for everybody who showed up. You have a million places you can go to. So thank you for taking this hour to share with me. I appreciate it.
And anything I can do to help with Black Hat or anything else, let me know.
Thank you so much. Have a really wonderful day.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Joanne, Robbie, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.